Alan Mason opened his eyes to darkness. His head hurt. The air smelled strange, a mix of metal and something like rotten eggs. He tried to move his arms, but they were tied behind his back. The floor beneath him was cold and hard. Not the floor of his ship, not the ground of Earth. He remembered bits and pieces. His team landing on the planet. The strange readings on their devices. Then the attack. Fast, silent creatures moving like shadows. Now this. A cell of some kind. Light suddenly flooded the room as a door slid open. Alan squinted against the brightness. A tall figure stood in the doorway. It wasn't human. Its body looked like a praying mantis but was the size of a tall man. Its skin was a pale blue color that seemed to shimmer. "The human is awake," the creature said in a clicking voice. Another creature joined the first one. They both stared at Alan with large black eyes that didn't blink. "Good timing." "The transport leaves soon," the second creature said. Alan cleared his throat. "Who are you? Where's my team?" His voice came out rough and dry. The first creature made a sound that might have been a laugh. "I am Zextal, commander of this outpost. Your team is dead or gone. It doesn't matter now." Alan felt a cold wave of fear, but pushed it down. Show no weakness. That was the first rule of capture drilled into him during his military training. "What do you want from me?" Alan asked, keeping his voice steady. Zextal moved closer. "Want? Nothing. You are a gift, human. A tribute." The second creature brought forward a small device and pressed it against Alan's neck. A sharp pain, then a spreading coldness. "The dragons will find you interesting," Zextal said as Alan's vision began to blur. "You're the first human they'll taste." Alan tried to fight the drug, but darkness pulled him down again. When Alan woke again, he was outside. The air was fresher, here, with a strange sweetness to it. The sky above him was pale purple with two small moons visible even in daylight. He was lying on rocky ground near the mouth of a large cave. His hands were free now, but his weapons and equipment were gone. Even his uniform had been replaced with simple clothes made of some rough material. His head still felt fuzzy from the drug, but panic sharpened his mind. The aliens, the Vraxians, he remembered now from the mission briefing, had left him here as some kind of sacrifice. 2 dragons. Alan got to his feet slowly, testing his balance. His body ached, but nothing seemed broken. He patted himself down, checking for anything useful. The Vraxians had been thorough, taking everything. Wait, they'd missed the small emergency kit in his boot. The standard issue kit was designed to look like part of the boot's heel. Inside were basic survival tools, a tiny multi-tool, fire starter, water purifier, and a small device for sending emergency signals. Not much, but better than nothing. Alan looked around. The cave behind him stretched deep into a mountain. In front of him was a rocky plain that led to a thick forest maybe 2 miles away. No sign of his ship or team. No sign of the Vraxians either. He had 2 choices. Head into the open plain toward Dualer, the forest, or go into the cave. Both could be deadly. The plain offered no cover if he was being watched. The cave might lead to these dragons the Vraxians mentioned. Alan thought about what he knew. The Vraxians were afraid of these dragons, afraid enough to offer sacrifices. That meant the dragons were powerful, but it also meant they hadn't wiped out the Vraxians completely, which suggested some kind of balance existed. If the dragons were simply mindless beasts, they would have either been killed off or would have killed all the Vraxians by now. So they must have some intelligence, maybe even enough to communicate with. It was a thin hope, but it was something. The sound of wind drawing over large wings made the decision for him. Something big was flying toward him from the plain. Alan ducked into the cave, moving quickly, but quietly. His eyes adjusted to the dimness as he made his way deeper. The cave floor sloped downward, and soon he found himself in a tunnel that branched off in multiple directions. Alan chose a path that seemed to lead further down into the mountain. If he was going to survive, he needed to understand the territory. As he moved, he thought about his training. Before joining the Space Corps, He had been part of a special survival unit. They had trained him to adapt to extreme environments, to think creatively with limited resources, to understand alien psychology. All those skills would be tested now. After what felt like an hour of careful movement through the tunnels, Alan found a small chamber with a pool of water. He tested it with his purifier. Safe to drink. As he sipped the cold water, he thought about his next steps. First, he needed more information. What were these dragons? How many were there? Could they be reasoned with or avoided? Second, he needed to find food and make a more secure shelter. Third, he needed to try to signal his people if any had survived. A scraping sound echoed through the tunnels. Alan froze. It came again, closer this time. Something was moving toward him. Something large. Alan quickly backed away from the pool and found a small crevice in the wall. He squeezed into it, making himself as small as possible. From this hiding spot, he had a view of the chamber. A creature entered the chamber. In the dim light filtering from cracks in the ceiling, Alan saw it clearly. It wasn't what he expected. The dragon was about the size of a horse, with a long, snake-like neck and a narrow head. Its body was covered in scales that shimmered with an iridescent blue-green color. It had 4 legs and a pair of folded wings on its back. Its eyes were large and golden, with vertical pupils that widened in the dim light. It moved with grace to the pool and drank. Then it raised its head and sniffed the air. Alan held his breath. The dragon turned its head, looking directly at Alan's hiding place. "I know you're there," it said. The voice was inside Alan's head, not spoken aloud. "Come out, strange one. I won't harm you. Yet." Alan's heart pounded. The dragon could speak, or at least communicate mentally. This changed everything. Slowly, he stepped out from the crevice, keeping his movements smooth and non-threatening. "My name is Alan Mason," he said, not knowing if the dragon could understand his spoken words. "I mean no harm." The dragon tilted its head, studying him. "A human," it said in his mind. "We've heard of your kind, but never seen one. I am Kira. Why are you in our territory?" "I was brought here against my will," Alan said. "By the Vraxians. They said I was a tribute." Kira made a sound that might have been a laugh. "They still do that. Silly creatures." Alan took a careful step forward. "You don't eat the tributes?" "Eat?" Kira seemed surprised. "Why would we eat thinking beings? The Vraxians fear what they don't understand. They leave gifts to keep us happy, though we've never threatened them." She studied Alan more closely. "You're far from home, human. The stars are cruel today." "Maybe," Alan said. "Or maybe I'm exactly where I need to be." As night fell outside, Alan heard the beating of massive wings echoing through the cave system. His journey into the world of dragons had just begun. 3 days passed since Alan first met Kira. He had been living in a small side cave that Kira showed him. It had a natural shelf for sleeping, and a tiny stream of fresh water running along one wall. Alan used his emergency kit to set up a small camp. Each day, Kira brought him fruits and something like bread made from cave plants. Alan spent his time learning about the dragons, or the dracones as they called themselves. Kira was young for her kind, only 60 years old. Dragons could live for hundreds of years. She was curious about humans and asked many questions. At first, they struggled to communicate. Kira could send thoughts to Alan's mind, but he couldn't reply the same way. He spoke out loud and used hand signals. Then Alan had an idea. He took apart the small emergency signal device from his boot kit. Using its parts and some crystals Kira brought him, he made a simple device that could translate his brainwaves into something Kira could understand better. It wasn't perfect, but it helped them talk more easily. "Why do the Vraxians fear you so much?" Alan asked one day as they sat near the entrance of his small cave. "You seem peaceful to me." Kira's scales shimmered in the dim light. "They saw us as monsters from the start. When they first came to this world, one of our kind tried to greet them. They attacked out of fear. After that, we kept our distance. They started leaving tributes at the edge of our territory. We accepted, Them because it seemed important to them, but we never asked for anything. Alan nodded. Misunderstanding can be dangerous. Yes, Kira agreed. But now you are here, the first human to know us. Come, it's time you met the others. Alan felt nervous as he followed Kira deeper into the cave system. The tunnels wound down and around, sometimes opening into large chambers. Alan tried to memorize the path, but it was complex. After about an hour of walking, they reached a massive underground cavern. Alan stopped and stared in wonder. The cavern was huge, bigger than any natural cave he had seen before. The ceiling was hundreds of feet high and covered in glowing crystals that lit the entire space with a soft blue light. The floor was mostly flat with raised areas like small hills. A large underground lake filled one side of the cavern. All around were dragons of different sizes and colors. Some were as small as dogs darting through the air on quick wings. Others were massive, as big as buses, resting on the raised areas. They all had the same basic shape as Kira: 4 legs, wings, long necks, but with many variations in their scales, horns, and features. This is our central gathering place, Kira explained. Most Draconis live in smaller family caves connected to this main cavern. As they walked into the open, the dragons noticed them. Many turned to stare at Alan. Some of the smaller ones flew closer to look at him. Alan felt their mental presence, light touches against his mind, curious but not invasive. Kira led him toward a raised platform where 3 large dragons rested. They were older, their scales duller than the others but still impressive. These were the elders, Kira explained in his mind. Elders, I bring a human visitor, Kira announced. His name is Alan Mason. He was left as a tribute by the Vraxians, but he is a thinking being with much knowledge. The largest dragon, with scales the color of storm clouds, lowered his head to look at Alan. His mental voice was deep and powerful. I am Elder Zorn, he said in Alan's mind. We have never met a human before. The stars are vast and we know little of what exists beyond our world. Alan bowed his head respectfully. Thank you for allowing me into your home. I came to this planet with other humans on a mission of exploration. We were attacked by the Vraxians and I was brought here. I don't know if any of my team survived. The second elder, a dragon with golden scales, spoke next. Why do you explore other worlds? Human? To learn, Alan said simply. To find new knowledge, new life forms, to understand the universe better. This seemed to please the elders. They exchanged looks with each other, their mental voices a whisper Alan couldn't quite catch. Elder Zorn spoke again. Show us something. Of human knowledge, Alan Mason. Help us understand your kind. Alan thought for a moment. Then he knelt down and cleared a flat space on the stone floor. From his pocket, he took a small piece of metal from his emergency kit. Using it as a tool, he began to scratch marks into the stone. First, he drew the solar system, Earth, Sun, and the planets around it. Then he added other star systems, drawing lines between them to show distances. As he worked, he explained how humans had learned to travel between stars, the science behind it. He drew simple diagrams of spacecraft and explained how they worked. The dragons gathered around, watching with interest. Alan could feel their mental murmurs of curiosity and surprise. When he finished his basic astronomy lesson, Elder Zorn seemed impressed. Your kind sees the stars differently than we do. Interesting. We have much to learn from each other. Over the next few days, Alan was welcomed into the Draconis community. He spent time with different dragons, learning their ways while sharing human knowledge. He discovered that despite their fearsome appearance, the Draconis were mostly scholars and thinkers. They valued knowledge above all else. They had advanced understanding of the natural world and could shape the crystals that grew in their caves to channel energy in useful ways. But they had never developed metalworking or chemistry the way humans had. Alan's knowledge of these subjects fascinated them. In return, they taught him about their mental abilities. All Draconis were connected through a telepathic bond. They could share thoughts and feelings across great distances. This bond was the center of their culture. Important decisions were made together, with all dragons sharing their thoughts until they reached agreement. 1 week after meeting the elders, Alan was working with Kira and a dragon named Lyris to improve his translation device. Suddenly, Kira stiffened. "Vraxians," she said, "at the edge of our territory. Are they bringing another tribute?" Alan asked. "No," Kira replied. "They are watching, hiding. They have seen you with us." Lyris, an older dragon with deep red scales, looked troubled. "They have never watched before. They leave tributes and go quickly, afraid to linger." Alan thought about this. "They're surprised I'm alive. They expected the dragons, you, to eat me or kill me. Now they see me talking with you. That changes how they see both of us." "Is this dangerous?" Kira asked. Alan nodded slowly. "It might be. The Vraxians acted from fear before. Now they'll be confused, maybe more afraid. People and creatures often fear what they don't understand, and they clearly don't understand our relationship." Elder Zorn approached them, his mental voice reaching all three at once. "Alan speaks truth. Something has changed. We must learn more about these Vraxians now. For too long we have ignored them as long as they stayed in their territory." Alan looked at the dragons around him. They had welcomed him, shared their knowledge with him. Now he might be bringing trouble to their peaceful world. But he also had an opportunity to help two species understand each other better. "I'll help you," Alan said. "First, we need to know why they fear you so much, and why they're suddenly interested in watching us." That night, as the Vraxian scouts observed from hidden spots at the cave entrance, they saw something unexpected. A human walking freely among dragons, talking with them, working with them. They returned to their leaders with troubling news. The sacrifice had become something else entirely. 2 months passed. Alan now moved easily through the dragon caves. He had his own small cave near Elder Zorn's family area. Using crystal technology mixed with parts from his emergency kit, he had made better tools for himself. He wore clothes. Made from a soft plant fiber the dragons grew in underground gardens. His beard had grown long and his hair reached his shoulders. Alan and Kira had become close friends. Each day they explored different parts of the vast cave system together. Today they were in a section Alan had never seen before, far from the central cavern. "These tunnels lead to the sacred crystal fields," Kira explained as they walked. "Only elders usually come here, but Zorn said you should see them." The tunnel opened into a massive cavern, even larger than the central gathering place. Alan gasped at the sight. The entire space was filled with huge crystals growing from floor to ceiling. They glowed with soft colors, blue, purple, green, lighting the cavern in a rainbow of light. Some crystals were as small as Alan's hand, others as large as buildings. "These are the heart of our power," Kira said. "The crystals amplify our mental abilities. They store knowledge, too. Our oldest memories are kept in the largest ones." Alan walked carefully between the crystal formations. "They're beautiful." "Yes," Kira agreed. "And very important to us. That's why." She stopped. Suddenly, "What's wrong?" Alan asked. Kira's mental voice became worried. "Something isn't right. The crystals at the far edge of the field feel wrong." They moved quickly through the crystal forest until they reached the far wall of the cavern. Here, the crystals looked different. Some were dull, their light fading. Others had strange dark spots inside them. Alan touched one carefully. "What happened to these?" "I don't know," Kira said. "But look there." She pointed with her wing to a small tunnel leading out from the cavern. "That tunnel goes to the surface. It's sealed by crystal doors that only elders can open. Except the doors are partly open," Alan finished, seeing the gap in the large crystal panels that should have blocked the tunnel. They looked at each other. Without speaking, they moved toward the tunnel and slipped through the gap. The tunnel sloped upward, twisting as it went. After walking for about 10 minutes, they reached the surface. They emerged on a mountainside covered in thick purple plants. The sky was bright overhead, making Alan squint after so long underground. Kira's scales shimmered in the sunlight. "We don't come to the surface often," Kira said. "We prefer our caves." Alan nodded, looking around. Then he froze. In the distance, maybe half a mile away, he saw movement. He pulled out a small device he had made, a simple telescope using crystal lenses. Through it, he could see clearly. "Vraxians," he said quietly. "They're digging." Kira looked where he pointed. "That's still Draconis land. They shouldn't be there." Alan watched the aliens work. They had machines that cut into the ground. They were pulling something from the earth. Crystals similar to the ones in the sacred cavern, but smaller. "They're mining your crystals," Alan said. "Taking them." Kira's mental voice was angry now. "They have no right. Those crystals are sacred to us." "Let's get closer," Alan suggested. "We need to see exactly what they're doing." They moved carefully down the mountain, staying hidden in the thick plants. When they got closer, Alan could see more details. The Vraxians had a small camp with temporary buildings. They were loading the crystals into containers and taking them away on hovering transport vehicles. One building was larger than the others. Through its windows, Alan could see lab equipment. The Vraxians were studying the crystals, running tests on them. "I don't like this," Alan whispered. "Let's go back and tell the elders." As they turned to leave, Alan spotted something that made his blood run cold. In the lab building, he saw a familiar shape, a human device. It was a disruptor, a weapon designed to interfere with telepathic communication. They were illegal in human space because of how dangerous they were to telepathic species. Alan had seen one in a military briefing years ago. The Vraxians must have gotten the design somehow, and they were adapting it to work with the stolen crystals. "We need to go now," Alan said urgently. "I know what they're doing, and it's very bad." They hurried back to the tunnel and down to the sacred cavern. From there, they ran to the central gathering place to find the elders. Elder Zorn listened carefully as Alan explained what they had seen. When Alan described the disruptor device, Zorn's mental voice became deeply troubled. "If this weapon does what you say, it could destroy our entire society," the elder said. "Our mental bond is what connects us all. Without it, we would be lost, confused. We could not function." "That's exactly what they want," Alan said. "They fear you because they think you're dangerous predators. Now they're making a weapon that will disable you without having to fight you directly." The Council of Elders gathered quickly. All 7 of the oldest and wisest dragons came together to discuss this threat. Alan stood before them, explaining everything in detail. "The tributes," Alan said, "they weren't just gifts out of fear. They were distractions. While you were focused on the cave entrance where they left their offerings, they were sneaking onto other parts of your land to mine the crystals." Elder Mira, the oldest female dragon, spoke. "How long has this been happening?" "These crystals are dying because something is affecting the entire field." "Months, maybe years," Alan said. "And now they're building weapons with what they've taken. Weapons specifically designed to hurt you." "What can we do?" asked another elder. "We are not warriors. We have lived in peace for thousands of years." Alan thought of his military training. "First, we need more information. We need to know exactly what they're planning and when they might attack. Then we need to prepare defenses." The dragons looked at each other, their mental voices a quiet hum that Alan couldn't quite hear. Finally, Elder Zorn spoke. "Alan Mason, you understand these Vraxians better than we do. You understand weapons and defense. Will you help us?" Alan stood straight, looking at the gathered dragons. These peaceful beings had taken him in, shared their knowledge, made him part of their community. He would not let them be destroyed. "Yes," he said firmly. "I'll help you. The Vraxians think they sacrificed me to monsters. They don't realize they delivered their biggest problem right to your door." Over the next week, Alan worked with selected dragons to gather information. Kira, being small and quick, flew over the Vraxian mining camp at night, staying high enough to avoid detection. Other dragons used their mental powers to sense the emotions and surface thoughts of Vraxians who came near their territory. Alan himself went out in disguise, using mud and plants to change his appearance. He got close enough to hear the Vraxians talking about their plans. What they learned was frightening. The Vraxians planned to attack in 3 months, when they had enough crystal-powered disruptors to cover the entire mountain range. They believed the dragons were dangerous creatures that needed to be eliminated so they could take over the resource-rich land. They don't understand you at all, Alan told the elders, and they won't try to understand. They've decided you're enemies. Then, we must prepare, Elder Zorn said sadly. For the first time in our history, we must learn the ways of war. 1 month passed since discovering the Vraxian plan. Alan now spent every day training the dragons. This wasn't easy. The Draconis had no concept of fighting or war. They had lived in peace for thousands of years. Their mental bond made conflict, within their society, almost impossible. But they were quick learners. Alan started with basic concepts: defense, communication, strategies for protecting their home. We don't need to kill, Alan told the group of younger dragons he was training. Today, we need to protect ourselves and stop their weapons from working. Kira had become Alan's main helper. She translated his ideas to the others through the mental bond when needed. Today they were practicing flying formations in one of the larger caverns. Move together, Alan called out as the dragons flew in groups. Watch each other. React as one. Across the cave system, other groups were working on different tasks. Some dragons learned how to use their natural abilities to block tunnel entrances. Others worked on early warning systems, extending their mental awareness to detect Vraxians approaching from any direction. The most important work happened in the crystal caverns. Elder Zorn and the most scientifically minded dragons worked with Alan to develop shields against the disruptor weapons. Using his knowledge of how such weapons worked, combined with the dragon's understanding of crystal energy, they created special formations that could block the harmful frequencies. After the training session ended, Alan sat with Kira on a ledge, overlooking the central cavern. He looked tired but satisfied. "Your people are learning quickly," he said. Kira's mental voice was proud. "We may be peaceful, but we are not weak. We will protect our home." Alan nodded. "But I'm worried about the younger ones like Lysander. He still thinks we can solve this by talking to the Vraxians." Lysander was a young male dragon, barely 30 years old. He had bright green scales and a quick mind. But he struggled with the idea of conflict. He believed all beings could find peace through understanding. "He has a kind heart," Kira said. "But he doesn't understand the danger." As if summoned by their conversation, Lysander landed on the ledge beside them. His mental voice was troubled. "Why can't we try to speak with the Vraxians?" he asked. "Explain that we mean no harm? Show them we are thinking beings, not monsters?" Alan sighed. He had explained this before, but Lysander still didn't accept it. "Sometimes beings choose not to understand. The Vraxians have decided you're dangerous. They've been planning this for years. They don't want to know the truth." "But we should at least try," Lysander insisted. Alan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small crystal device he had made. This recorded Vraxian communications from their camp. "Listen." He activated the device. A Vraxian voice spoke, translated by the crystal technology. "Phase 2 begins next week. With enough disruptors, we can neutralize the entire dragon population. Once they're disabled, we can clear them out and take control of the crystal resources. The survey team estimates we can triple our energy production with these mountains under our control." Alan turned off the device. "They don't see you as equals. They see you as obstacles to remove." Lysander's mental voice became sad. "I understand, now. Thank you for showing me the truth." As Lysander flew away, Kira looked at Alan with concern. "You look worried, more than usual." Alan nodded. "Time is running out. The Vraxians are moving faster than we expected. We have maybe 6 weeks left, not 2 months, and there's something else." He paused, looking out across the cavern where dragons were working together, preparing their defenses. "My emergency beacon has been receiving signals. Weak ones, but getting stronger. I think a human rescue ship might be close, looking for me." Kira's eyes widened. "Your people came for you? After all this time?" "Maybe," Alan said. "The signal is too weak to be sure. But if they're here, they'll be in danger too. The Vraxians attacked my team before. They'll do it again. That night, Alan couldn't sleep. He sat in his small cave working on a new device, a stronger transmitter that might reach the human ship if it was really there. He used parts from his original equipment combined with dragon crystal technology. Just before dawn, a mental call woke him. It was Elder Zorn, his voice urgent in Alan's mind. Come quickly to the northern tunnels. Something has happened. Alan grabbed his tools and ran through the tunnels. He had learned the layout well enough to move quickly even in near darkness. When he reached the northern section, several dragons were gathered at a tunnel entrance. Elder Zorn stood there looking grave. Beside him was a young female dragon named Sari. She looked shaken. Tell Alan what you saw, Zorn said to her. Sari's mental voice trembled. I was patrolling the northern sky before dawn as you taught us. I saw lights moving above the trees, not Vraxian ships, different. Then one of the lights fell down into the forest. There was fire, then nothing. Alan felt his heart race. A crash. A ship crashed. He turned to Zorn. I need to go there. Now. It might be humans. My people. Zorn looked concerned. It's dangerous. The Vraxians patrol that area. I have to try, Alan insisted. If it's my people, they'll be hurt, confused. The Vraxians will find them. After a moment, Zorn nodded. Kira and Lyris will go with you. They are our fastest flyers and can carry you. Within minutes, Alan was strapped to Kira's back with a harness he had made for such occasions. Lyris, a strong male with deep blue scales, flew beside them. They left through a high tunnel and emerged into the early morning sky. They flew low and fast, using the trees for cover when possible. Alan directed them toward where Sari had seen the crash. As they got closer, they saw broken trees and a trail of debris leading to a small clearing. There, partly buried in the soft ground, was a human shuttle. It was much smaller than the ship Alan had arrived on, a rescue craft designed for searching planetary surfaces. Part of it was damaged from the crash, but it didn't look too severe. They landed in the trees nearby. Alan slipped off Kira's back. Stay hidden, he told the dragons. I'll check for survivors. Moving carefully, Alan approached the shuttle. Its hatch was open. Inside, he found what he had hoped for, humans. Two of them, a man and a woman, both unconscious but alive. They wore the same uniform he had once worn, with patches showing they were part of a search and rescue team. The woman stirred as Alan checked her pulse. Her eyes opened slowly, then widened in shock. Easy, Alan said softly. I'm human like you. Alan Mason, Sergeant, Earth Defense Corps. The woman stared at him in disbelief. Mason, we've been searching for you for months. Everyone thought you were dead. Not dead, Alan said, helping her sit up. Just, making new friends. What's your name? Lieutenant Kara Williams, she replied. That's Corporal Frank Reed. Our shuttle was hit by something. Energy weapon, I think. We managed to crash land, but communications are down. Alan nodded grimly. Vraxians. They shot you down. They don't want any humans interfering with their plans. Vraxians? Kara asked. The insectoid species? We detected their settlement, but had no contact with them. They're planning something dangerous, Alan said quickly. And we don't have much time. Can you walk? We need to move before they find us. As he helped Kara to her feet, a shadow passed overhead. All three looked up to see a Vraxian scout ship moving slowly above the trees. Too late, Alan muttered. They're already looking for you. The Vraxian scout ship hovered over the crash site. Alan pulled Kara down behind some wreckage. Frank was still unconscious inside the shuttle. Don't move, Alan whispered. They're scanning for life signs. A beam of light swept over the area from the Vraxian ship. Alan had seen such technology before. It could detect heat and movement. What are they? Kara asked quietly. I'll explain everything later, Alan said. Right now we need to get away from here. The scout ship moved closer. Alan looked toward the trees where Kira and Lyris were hiding. He needed their help, but bringing Them into the open would reveal their presence to the Vraxians. Making a quick decision, Alan reached for a piece of broken metal from the shuttle. He threw it far to the left, into the dense bushes. The sound drew the attention of the Vraxian ship, which turned its scanning beam in that direction. "Now," Alan said, helping Kara to her feet. "We need to get Frank and move to the trees on the right." Together they pulled the still unconscious Frank from the shuttle and dragged him toward the tree line. Just as they reached the edge of the forest, the Vraxian ship turned back toward them. A voice boomed from the ship in the Vraxian language, then switched to broken human speech. "Stop! Do not move!" Alan pushed Kara and Frank deeper into the trees. "Keep going!" The ship fired a warning shot. Energy sizzled against a tree, turning it to ash instantly. Then Kira and Lyris burst from their hiding place. They flew straight at the Vraxian ship, surprising the pilots. Lyris shot a blast of plasma, what humans might call fire breath, at the ship's sensors. The front panel melted, blinding the ship's targeting systems. The Vraxians fired wildly, missing the fast-moving dragons. Kira dove down to where Alan stood with the other humans. "Get on," she called to Alan mentally. "Both of you climb on their backs," Alan told Kara. "They're friends. They'll carry us to safety." Kara looked shocked but didn't argue. She helped Alan secure Frank to Lyris's back, then climbed onto Kira behind Alan. The dragons took off just as more Vraxian ships appeared in the distance. "They called for backup," Alan said. "We need to get back to the caves fast." The dragons flew low and fast, weaving through canyons and valleys to avoid detection. When they reached the mountain, they entered through a hidden entrance that led deep into the cave system. Inside, Elder Zorn and the other dragons were waiting. They helped move Frank to a healing chamber where special crystals could help his recovery. Kara looked around in amazement at the huge cavern filled with dragons. "What is this place? How did you survive here?" Alan smiled. "These are the Draconis, the dragons. They took me in, taught me their ways. They're peaceful, intelligent beings, not the monsters the Vraxians described." Over the next few hours, Alan explained everything to Kara, how the Vraxians had left him as a sacrifice, how he had befriended the dragons, and the Vraxians' plans to attack with disruptor weapons. "Our ship detected unusual energy readings. From the Vraxian settlement," Kara said. "That must be their weapons." "How many people do you have?" Alan asked. "Just a small rescue team. 20 of us on the main ship in orbit," Kara replied. "We've been searching sector by sector for months." Alan's face grew serious. 20 won't be enough to stop the Vraxian attack. They have hundreds of soldiers and those weapons." Elder Zorn joined them. "The Vraxians have moved their timeline forward. Our scouts report they're preparing to attack in 3 days. We need a new plan," Alan said. "With humans involved now, the Vraxians will be even more determined." For the next 2 days, Alan worked with Kara, the now recovered Frank, and the dragons to prepare. Using parts from the human shuttle combined with dragon crystal technology, they improved their defenses against the disruptor weapons. Kara was able to contact the rescue ship briefly before the Vraxians blocked their signals. The ship's captain promised to send help, but warned it would take time to reach them. "We're on our own for now," Kara told Alan after the communication ended. On the 3rd day, their early warning system detected Vraxian forces moving toward the mountains from all directions. The attack had begun. Alan stood with Elder Zorn, Kira, Kara, and Frank on a high ledge overlooking the main entrance to the cave system. They could see Vraxian ships and ground troops approaching. "They're spreading out to surround all known entrances," Alan said. "But they don't know about the hidden ones." "What's the plan?" Frank asked, checking the makeshift weapons they had created. Alan looked at his human friends and his dragon allies. "We can't let them use those disruptors. Our main target is their command ship. That's where they control all the weapons from." Kira's mental voice was determined. "The flying teams are ready. We'll distract them while you and the humans get to the command ship." Elder Zorn looked at Alan. "For thousands of years we lived in peace. Now we must fight to protect that peace. You have taught us well, Alan Mason." The first wave of Vraxian troops reached the main entrance. They set up large disruptor devices pointed at the cave opening. "Now!" Alan signaled. Dragons burst from hidden exits all around the mountain. They flew in the formations Alan had taught them, confusing the Vraxian forces who had expected them to rush out from the main entrance. While the dragons drew the Vraxians' attention, Alan, Kara, and Frank slipped out through a small tunnel that opened on the far side of the mountain. They wore special crystal pendants that would shield them from the disruptor's effects. Using the cover of rocks and trees, they made their way toward the Vraxian command ship. It was larger than the others, sitting on a flat area a mile from the mountain. "Remember the plan," Alan said as they got closer. "We place the crystals on the ship's power core. The feedback will disable all the disruptors at once." They crawled through tall purple grass, avoiding Vraxian patrols. When they reached the ship, they found an access panel on the bottom. Alan had studied Vraxian technology during his time with the dragons. He knew how to open it. Once inside, they moved quickly through narrow corridors. 2 Vraxian guards spotted them, but Kara and Frank used stun weapons made from crystal technology to drop them before they could sound an alarm. "The power core should be this way," Alan whispered, leading them deeper into the ship. They found it, a large room filled with humming machinery. In the center was a glowing column of energy. "That's it," Alan said. "The control center for all disruptor weapons." They attached the special crystals to the main power conduits. Alan activated them using a code sequence. The crystals began to glow brightly, pulsing with energy. "Time to go," he said. "We have 5 minutes before they overload the system." They ran back the way they had come. Outside, the battle was in full swing. Dragons flew overhead using plasma blasts to distract the Vraxians. None of the disruptors had been fully activated yet. The dragons had been too quick, too unexpected, in their coordinated assault. Alan, Kara, and Frank had just reached the safety of the trees when a high-pitched whine came from the command ship. Light burst from every opening in the vessel. Then all across the battlefield, the disruptor devices went dark. The Vraxian troops looked around in confusion. Their main weapons had failed. Their communications had gone silent. Without their technology advantage, they faced creatures much larger and more powerful than themselves. From the trees, Alan activated a communication device. His voice boomed across the battlefield, translated into the Vraxian language. "Your weapons have failed. The dragons are not your enemies. They never were. Put down your weapons and leave their lands in peace." For a moment, everything was still. Then the Vraxian commander stepped forward, looking up at the dragons circling overhead. "What are they?" the commander asked, his voice carrying to where Alan stood. Alan walked out from the trees, Kira landing beside him. "They are the Draconis. Peaceful beings you never tried to understand. This is their home. You will respect it or face the consequences." As if on cue, a bright light appeared in the sky. The human rescue ship had arrived, its weapon systems clearly visible. The Vraxian commander looked at his disabled forces, then at the dragons, then at the human ship. Slowly, he lowered his weapon. "We will withdraw," he said. 2 weeks later, Alan stood on a mountain ledge with Kira, watching as human diplomats met with Vraxian and Draconis representatives. A formal peace treaty was being discussed. "You did it," Kira said in his mind. "You brought peace." Alan shook his head. "We did it together. They threw me to the dragons thinking I was helpless. They never realized that humans and dragons together would be the real threat to their plans." Kira's mental laughter was warm. "Will you go back to your people now?" Alan looked at the dragon who had become his closest friend, then at the cave system he had called home for months. "My people need someone who understands the dragons," he said. "I think I'll stay as the official human ambassador to the Draconis, if you'll have me." Kira bumped her head against his shoulder affectionately. "The stars brought you to us for a reason, Alan Mason. This is your home now." Together they turned and flew back to the caves, where both humans and dragons waited, to build a new future, one where understanding replaced fear, and former enemies became allies.